Imagine discovering a glitch that could turn you into a millionaire overnight and living a life of unimaginable luxury, partying on private jets, and buying islands without the bank or the police ever catching on. Join us on a wild ride as we delve into the unbelievable true story of the ATM millionaire who hacked his way to $1.6 million and got away with it for 6 months. How did he do it? How close were the authorities to catching him? Subscribe to follow the gripping story of one man's audacious journey through wealth and intrigue and discover the secrets behind his extraordinary, yet precarious escapade. In February 2011, Dan Saunders, a 29-year-old bartender hailing from the quaint town of Wangaratten in Australia, found himself out for a night of fun with his friends. As the night unfolded, with rounds of drinks being generously shared among them, Dan's wallet came up a bit short. In need of extra cash, he decided to step around the corner to a National Australia Bank ATM. This seemingly ordinary transaction took an unexpected turn. When Dan attempted to check the balance on his savings account, the ATM cryptically displayed, "Balance unavailable at this time." Trying to get information about his credit card balance proved equally futile. To make matters more confounding, his endeavor to transfer $200 from his credit card to his savings was met with a message stating, "Transaction canceled." Perplexed and determined to get to the bottom of this puzzling situation, Dan decided to withdraw $200 from his savings account, which, surprisingly, succeeded. He returned to the bar, successfully covering the cost of the drinks. The enigma of the NAB ATM lingered in Dan's mind. On his way home, he couldn't resist the temptation to revisit the same machine. This time he experimented further. He initiated a $200 transfer and withdrew it, then followed it with $500 and eventually $600, amassing a sum close to $2,000, all without leaving any trace of the transactions. A strange mix of amazement and confusion washed over Dan. It felt like a surreal dream, but the money he had acquired was very real and present beside him when he woke up the next morning. Dan was aware that he would likely have to repay this mysterious windfall at some point, but for the time being, a bold thought crossed his mind. Why not relish an extraordinary week of indulgence and enjoyment? Dan's first move was to purchase a new refrigerator for his home, a secret indulgence that he shared with his unsuspecting fiancée. In fact, Dan kept his newfound wealth a closely guarded secret, choosing not to confide in anyone. He understood that further transactions and experimentation were needed to fully comprehend the extraordinary situation he found himself in. Dan's assumption about his account being in debt was indeed accurate, as his savings had depleted by $2,000. However, the inexplicable allure of the NAB ATM kept drawing him back. Late one night around the same time as before, 1 a.m., he attempted to transfer $2,000 from his credit card to his savings, only to receive a transaction canceled message. With a sense of curiosity, he inserted his card once more to check the balance on his savings, which now read zero. Undeterred, he boldly transferred $7,000, and to his astonishment, his balance increased by the same amount. Here, Dan uncovered a pattern. Every night between 12 and 1 a.m., the bank's ATMs temporarily disconnected from the network and entered standby mode. That very night, when Dan tried to transfer $200, the machine couldn't connect to the bank's network to verify his credit limit, but it went ahead and honored the transaction anyway. As long as he transferred funds from his credit account to his savings during this time frame, he could acquire as much money as he desired. The catch was that the bank would catch up with these transactions the following day, so Dan needed to stay one step ahead and continue moving money. Moreover, it wasn't just numbers on a screen. He could physically withdraw cash. As weeks went by, Dan got deeply embroiled in this scheme and developed a gambling addiction at his workplace, a local pub. His unusual betting activity didn't escape his boss's notice, leading him to be fired by his boss. Shortly after, he received a message from his fiancée, ending their relationship with the words, "I don't know what's going on with you, but we're over." This marked a pivotal moment for Dan, as he realized he would never be able to repay the vast sums he had already spent. With resolve, he decided to go all in. Dan booked a train to Melbourne and checked into a luxurious 5-star hotel. His aim was to make each day better than the last. He and his friends lived in the lap of luxury, riding in limousines, booking multiple hotel suites for epic parties, and even flying on a private jet to a private island near Bali, where they took over the resort for 2 days, partying without a care in the world. Dan splurged on designer clothes, indulged in fine dining, embraced a lavish lifestyle, and even indulged in expensive luxuries like escorts and presidential hotel suites. Dan's extravagant generosity knew no bounds, as he willingly granted a girl's request for shopping funds and generously financed another person's dream to learn French in Paris. Within a span of 6 months, Dan had spent a staggering $1.6 million. Astonishingly, the bank remained oblivious to his actions. They occasionally reached out to verify his purchases for security purposes, but never found it odd that he possessed such a vast sum. With people gravitating towards him due to his evident wealth, Dan was living a life of opulence, shelling out roughly $40,000 daily during the peak of his extravagant escapade. However, the dream couldn't last indefinitely. The intriguing aspect of Dan's case was the bank's failure to detect his activities. In other cases of bank glitches, it was merely a matter of time before the culprits were apprehended. So, what set Dan's situation apart? It was Dan's own conscience that eventually caught up with him. Despite outward appearances of living carefreely, he grappled with profound stress. His physical health began to deteriorate, resulting in balance issues and chest pain. A doctor diagnosed him with an anxiety attack, but Dan, unfamiliar with mental health, simply thanked the doctor and pressed on. A pivotal moment arrived when the doorbell at his luxurious suite rang. In his heart, Dan felt it was the police finally arriving, evoking a dream he had had of being apprehended by a SWAT team. His incredible journey, devoid of consequences thus far, had to conclude eventually. Surprisingly, it was the maid offering fresh towels, and the relief Dan felt was palpable. He recognized that he could no longer sustain this lifestyle without risking his life or becoming a fugitive. Dan had no intention of jeopardizing his family or enduring ongoing anxiety, so he made the deliberate choice to halt the transfers, allowing all of his accounts to plunge into debt. A bank official reached out, perplexed by the fact that his credit card was overdrawn by nearly $800,000, far surpassing the credit limit on the account. The bank was baffled by the situation. At one point, Dan took the initiative to contact the bank himself to inquire about the repercussions of his actions. A bank representative informed him the situation was dire. They were aware of his actions, the police were involved, and severe consequences loomed on the horizon. However, strangely, nothing happened for a period of 10 months. In his search for guidance, Dan reached out to a lawyer, who advised him to maintain a low profile and not stress about the situation. The lawyer was aware that the bank was willing to absorb the financial loss and hadn't actually engaged the police. They were eager to avoid the spotlight, keeping the incident under wraps. During this time, Dan's guilt and anxiety escalated, prompting him to seek help from a psychiatrist. Eventually, he made the tough decision to turn himself in as a means of moving forward. Knowing that the bank wanted to keep the matter private, Dan forced their hand by embarking on a media tour across Australia, publicly sharing his story. Once the entire country was informed, action could no longer be avoided. When Dan faced trial, it became apparent that few in the courtroom truly grasped the extent of his actions, including the judge and prosecutor. They all seemed perplexed, and the bank provided minimal evidence of the theft. Dan eventually pled guilty and was handed a sentence of 1 year in jail and 18 months of community service. Today, Dan leads a regular life as a bartender. He has found peace and a deeper self-understanding. He doesn't regret the experience, not even his time in jail, as it afforded him insight into a part of society he knew little about before. In the realm of known cases involving ATM or banking glitches, Dan stands out as the longest and most successful. He lived out his most extravagant fantasies and gained a taste of the lifestyle of the world's wealthiest individuals. We have come to an end of our story today. If you found this story captivating and want to stay updated on more intriguing tales, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our previous videos on YouTube.